Meeting of the West Boylston Zoning Board of Appeals. You do have a little bit of an echo there. Before we get started, because we are having, I think, a little bit of an IT issue, I want to confirm that folks online are able to hear me and hopefully hear everybody in the room. So could I ask, I noticed that we have two board members virtual, Mr. John Benson and Mr. Nate Orsiani. Could I ask one of you to confirm whether you can hear me okay? That I'm getting a thumbs up? Nate, yep, and I can hear you, if quietly. Okay, great. So it looks like folks can hear us online, that's wonderful. So that being the case, first item on the agenda for tonight is the continued public hearing for a comprehensive permit on the site located at 235, 245, and 249 West Boylston Street and 27 Pierce Street. So obviously this is a continued public hearing. I think we made a significant amount of progress at the last hearing, or I should say the last session, as this is all one hearing. One thing that I would like to do, thumbs up to, from Nate and John, you can still hear us okay? Okay, great, excellent. All right, so let's move on to the first order of business here. So what I'd like to do tonight is, I mean, obviously we talked about setting up sort of technical review with a particular engineering firm. Since the last time we met, we were able to initiate a relationship with VHB, which I think was one of the specific engineering firms that we had mentioned at the last session of the hearing. As the applicant is aware, they've already performed an initial review here. So sort of the main thing that I would like to get out of this meeting tonight is to get that initial feedback from the engineering firm. Of course, giving the applicant an opportunity to rebut or to add in any further comments or to make any updates that you feel are pertinent. But before we do, maybe turn it over to VHB for their sort of overall presentation. I was wondering if you had, just sort of at the beginning, if you had any sort of initial updates or any details that you'd like to offer the board before we go ahead with that presentation.
Sure. Pleased as the chair. My name is Robert Branca, Branded Realty Group 3, the developer of this site. VHB did a very thorough job. I knew they would. Very reputable firm. If we, in the interest of saving time, some of the things they called out, which was their job, we're talking about variations from the zoning board, zoning ordinance requirements. Those are things we specifically requested relief from. So if we could skip over those, because those are things that you're already going to consider. Mm-hmm. There were some things shown on the plan that they called out. I mean, we can address them, like, for example, possible restaurants. We did locate 2 grease traps, one for each of the commercial buildings, and we're not sure we're going to have a restaurant. And then some of the requirements of the zoning ordinance related to specific commercial uses, we don't know what those are. So I would say if we could skip that again, it's up to the engineer and you. If you want to, we're more than happy to review them. We just want to save your time and the town's time. Because again, if we get a particular commercial use, they still have to come to the town and get permits. They'll still have to comply with whether it's a loading space, parking. And we exceed the parking requirements for the zoning ordinance by 3 spaces. So we're not really needing relief there. And our traffic engineers provided us with a variety of things with which VHB has agreed, has confirmed are accurate. So, and what we'd like to do is complete the traffic portion of the review, given that, again, up to you and your consultants.
Yep.
But we thought that would probably be the most efficient use of time, and then would save further time at future meetings, because VHB does go into a variety of detailed analysis, which probably is going to be, we're going to need those meetings for. Mm-hmm. Things like site drainage, sewer, water, much more technical stuff that they're obviously experts in. So,
okay.
We thought that would be the best way to approach it, and that's what we're asking. Again, completely yours.
Yeah. That sounds, that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, one thing I would say with regard to your comment on the waivers that have been requested here, I think your point is well taken there. I would say that, and maybe not necessarily tonight, but at some point, maybe at the next meeting, I think one thing that would be helpful for this board would be to sort of specifically address each of the waivers that have been requested here, just so we know what the nature of them is. We can confer with the town engineer and figure out if it makes sense to waive certain things or not, sort of.
Clearly, yeah,
as
they're
the
all
case may be.
specified in our application. So
I
we
saw
expected
that.
you would,
Yep.
we expected you'd be going through them one by one.
Absolutely. So I think that's helpful. Judy, is there anything else that comes to mind as far as a game plan for tonight?
No, other than I just think the board needs an opportunity to hear from their peer review consultant. And then
Okay.
if you want to pivot from that and focus specifically on traffic, I think that's fine.
Okay.
But where you commissioned a report, and the public
Yeah.
is here, I think you at least want to give VHB a chance to kind of go through
absolutely.
their report.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that, and I don't think the applicant has an issue with
Yeah,
that either.
but I do agree with them generally that sort of going topic-based is helpful to do.
Great. All right. So that's good. And one other thing, I'm sorry, I was remiss in not doing this at the beginning of the hearing, but just to make it clear, as I did at the last session. So right now, it remains that there are the 5 full members of the ZBA are here. 3 of us are here in person. 2 of us are here remotely. I'll just mention everybody's name for the record. So still, as of right now, these would be the 5 voting members for this particular application. So we have Dave Femia over here. We have Barur Rajesh Kumar over here, myself, Chris Olson, and then we also have 2 full members online, John Benson virtually, as well as Nate Orsiani. So those were and remain the intended 5 sort of voting members for this application. And I'll just remind everybody that for this application to be approved, it's a simple majority, which is a little bit different from a lot of the applications that this board normally sees. So only 3 and not 4, only 3 yes votes are needed to grant a comprehensive permit. So just to make everybody clear about sort of, where all that stands. And so with that, why don't I turn it over to VHB and they can give their presentation. Dave, you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We received a letter from DCR.
Yes.
And I just want to know, did they get a letter? Did they also get this? So is there anything that you have to do with DCR?
Maybe you want to hold that until, I would direct that question to the peer review consultant a little bit later,
Okay.
maybe, but,
All right.
Okay.
but it's a
Yeah,
fair question, I just think this,
we'll come back to it.
yeah,
We'll come back to it.
definitely. Thank
All
you.
right, so with that, I don't know if Wayne, if you're available online or if there's somebody else from VHB who's prepared to. Okay,
Yes.
great.
Good
Wayne,
evening, Mr.
hello.
Chairman.
Good evening.
Can you hear me okay, Mr. Chairman?
Apologies, I was told that we're having a computer issue with the main computer that normally drives these hybrid sessions. So we're doing the best that we can.
Only when ZBA has a meeting. Other time, it's perfect.
Chris,
Yes,
think
that's a
maybe
little
we
bit
have-
better.
yeah, I think that may be happening at your end because Nate and I can hear him just fine.
Yeah, and I can hear John and Nate when they talked, when they spoke, I could hear them well also.
Yeah, I think it's just that town hall that's having the issue. Just give us 1
Okay.
second here.
Yeah. All right, so you tell me if you want me to continue or stop. Can you guys hear me enough to be
Yeah, that's-
audible?
This is better.
That's better. Thank you.
All right, so,
Thank you,
Mr.
Wayne.
Chairman, thank you for engaging VHB with the request to do this technical peer review. Just to kind of, for the record, for everybody's notes here, we delivered a comment letter dated January 27th to the board. We focused on 4 items that were posted, I believe posted on the ZBA's website having to do with this application. Appendix B, C, D, and E. That was the preliminary site plan, the architectural plans, the traffic impact and access study, and the stormwater report. We did not dive in deep into the comprehensive permit application for the project performer. That's more the ZBA's bailiwick, if you will. I do, in essence of time, I can do whatever the board would like here, but I do agree with the applicant, that it may make sense to focus. I heard there was more of a concern with some of the traffic discussion. It may be more important to focus on the traffic issues tonight. A lot of the issues in our comment letter are very technical based, and we will need to get through those. The applicant has not provided a response to this comment letter yet. So I don't know if we should go through all of those comments tonight, or we should focus on, as the applicant indicated, maybe discuss traffic issues. And one thing, I apologize, I do have Patrick Dunford from VHB with me here tonight. I'm sorry if there's audible issues. I hope you guys are able to at least catch what I'm saying here.
Yeah, most of it, there's a little bit of a lag that sort of comes in and goes out, but I think we're getting most of what you're saying.
Well, Pat and I would be glad to be in person at the next meeting if that would make things easier, Mr. Chairman.
I'm hopeful that maybe we'll have our IT issues worked out by then, but who knows? We can follow up.
So, as I said, a lot of our comments that we had were very technical in nature, having to do with site layout, drainage, utility connections, lighting, etc. We could certainly go through. I could give you highlights about some of the topics that we were concerned with, or we can, as the applicant suggested, discuss more of the traffic issues. I know that there was a supplemental traffic issue, traffic memorandum submitted, I believe, yesterday by the applicant's engineer. And I don't know if that's something that we want to focus on, or you'd like me to go through some of the technical, civil, and traffic issues from our comment letter. It's really the board's choice.
Yeah, so I think it would be helpful if you could maybe just start with a highlights list from each of the areas that you've reviewed.
Sure.
And I'd say also being sure to highlight the particular areas that are maybe concerning is the wrong word, but the issues that are sort of more obvious, more pressing, more critical of sort of deserving the board's attention.
Of course. Do I have sharing rights, Mr. Chairman, or can I get them?
I believe you do. Let
like
me know if you can't seem to do that.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully, let me make sure I pick the right one. Do you guys see a comment letter?
Yes.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right. So I will do just as you've suggested, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to give highlights of the items that we believe are probably the most concerning to us about this site development as planned. If anyone wants to follow along, this is our comment letter dated January 27th. All right. On page 1, I've highlighted the 4 items that we focused our review on. As I noted, we reviewed the submittal for basically the preliminary site plan, architectural plans, traffic impact and access study, and the stormwater report. And as the applicant noted, we did review things as they refer to the zoning bylaw, understanding this board has the right to waive some of those requirements. I am not going to go through every comment. I'm going to do as you suggested, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to highlight ones that are concerning to us, if you will. And if you want, the applicant can wait till the end to respond, or we can have an interactive discussion at your discretion. So on page 3, at the end of page 2, top of page 3, there was a graphic that was submitted as part of the site plan approval that I believe was intended to be a truck turning graphic in which it shows how large vehicles and medium-sized vehicles can navigate the site. In essence, I'm not sure if there was a printing error or something, but the graphic doesn't accurately accurately display what's necessary to show that large and medium-sized trucks can navigate the site. So that's something that has to be cleared up by the engineer. One of the other concerns we had is having to do, again, on page 3, comment 3.6, E7, section 3.6.E7, having to do with pedestrian crosswalks. We questioned some of the avenues for the pedestrian crosswalks. Some of them are extremely long. Some of them don't have what our opinion would be of adequate separation from vehicles. That's something that needs to be worked out. I'm going to be brief, Mr. Chairman. Please let me know if you want me to get into more detail. There was an issue with parking spaces being shown within the front yard setback of building 1. That's something, again, I have not had any feedback from the applicant's engineer on this. This may just be a simple oversight, but that's something that needs to be worked out, is the actual location of some of those parking spaces. And there's also a couple of areas where parking is proposed within 5 feet of a building, which our understanding is not desirable. Going on to page 4, we request that the applicant provide a calculation as to how the number of loading spaces are calculated and how many are required, etc. Moving on to stormwater. The applicant has provided 1 test pit per proposed infiltration basin. DEP requires more than that. We recommend that the applicant consider getting additional test pits to prevent a costly potential redesign and additional permitting at another time if soil conditions are determined to not be conducive to infiltration in the areas as proposed. Moving on to page 5. My engineer had some question about some of the drainage calculations. In regards to any type of emergency overflow or emergency outfall from these underground infiltration systems. Normally they have an emergency connection either into a public drainage system or some physical outfall. From our dissemination of the plans and calculations, we couldn't locate that. That's something that we'll need to discuss. On page 6, as part of the package that we saw, we did not, comment number 10, sorry, we did not see any actual pipe calculations showing that the pipe capacities have been sized appropriately as part of the work. On to general engineering comment number 1. I'll just read this because it may make sense to fully appreciate the entire comment. It appears that the project site was originally divided into 4 separate lots, which are now shown as a single consolidated lot on the current plans. We'd like to clarify whether the lots have already been legally consolidated or if they will be with the filing of an A&R plan. That's something that'll be necessary to understand. Comment number 2 talks about the truck turning graphic again, and more importantly, has the fire department reviewed this this proposed project, and have they given any comments or blessing to the board? On to page 7. The access driveway off of West Boylston Street seems to be rising up into the site with what appears to be some retaining walls on either side of the site access drive. And we're curious, we couldn't find anything on the plan, but we're curious if there's any type of vehicle and pedestrian protection, such as guardrail or barrier or something on the top of those retaining walls to keep vehicles or pedestrians from, if you will, toppling down into that access road coming into the site. We had some questions, as the applicant noted, about some of the sewer connections, either not being shown or not being complete. We'll need to work that out with the applicant's engineer. We would like to discuss some of the overall parking layout, comment number 18. Some of the some of the parking layout does facilitate some dead end areas where if you're trying to park, you can't circulate and you'd be forced to back up. So that's something that we would want to review with the engineer. Number 19, it appears that um, the project is proposing sidewalk improvements on West Boylston Street, obviously under the purview of Mass DOT, but also under the purview of this board. Everywhere except in front of number 231 West Boylston Street, the donuts, Gourmet Donuts. We understand the applicant doesn't control that site, but we would encourage some discussion with that that property owner to see if a contiguous sidewalk can be provided across the entire frontage, including that 231 parcel. All right, Pat, are you okay if I highlighted some of your comments and I can scroll through them since I'm sharing, but did you want to just talk about ones that concerned you the most?
I can give a similar overview to what you just did, if that pleases the board and yourself.
That's perfect, Pat.
Okay, and everyone, I'm assuming, can hear me okay, so wave or yell if you cannot.
We're good.
So, to date, first off, Pat Dunford, traffic engineer with VHB. I have reviewed the site plan, same site plan which Wayne reviewed, the June 2024 traffic study, and briefly reviewed a memorandum that came in January 28th. Appears to be addressing some comments from the earlier part of the hearing a few weeks ago. So overall study was put together professional manner, generally well done, no significant issues. I won't necessarily go through every item here, but on the existing conditions, one thing I did notice, the applicant put in new material showing Saturday conditions. And I agree with the original study, which focused on weekday morning and weekday evening conditions. That combined with the peak hours of the roadway are when conditions are busiest. Saturday has lower traffic volumes in the area generally. So if it works at weekday 5 o'clock, it's going to work on Saturdays as well. But the information they provided was helpful. Crash experience, they provided ample documentation of crash records in the area. Nothing overly significant, not to minimize there being one crash is one crash too many, but they supplemented that with additional information. So in the absence of an existing notable crash experience, we're trying to make sure the site doesn't create any new issues, which I think we can avoid. Moving forward, the future conditions without the project were properly done. The site generated traffic. There's a little bit of a different approach between VHB and Kimley Horn, but the end result is that the volumes are about the same, regardless which method that you do it. And they were somewhat conservative in that for the retail component of the site, they assumed that would all be destination traffic and not impulse traffic turning off of the main roadway into the site, pass-by trips, which you've probably heard of before. So the trip generation also appears to be appropriate. Looking at the analysis, how things are going to function with the project, we did notice there was a slight decrease in level of service, which you may be familiar with as a measure of delay, and that's at the signal of West Boylston and Woodland Street. As Wayne had mentioned, this project will be before Mass DOT for an access permit. I'm assuming they'll get a copy of this traffic study. I don't see that decrease in delay being significant, but it's a state jurisdiction signal. So if they have any concerns, there is the possibility of minor signal timing adjustments being made. The driveways themselves, the two on West Boylston Street and the one back one on Pierce, generally operate with acceptable delays. Obviously, turning onto the main roadway, West Boylston Street, can be difficult at times, but it wasn't excessive to the point where it raised notable concerns. One thing I did see they partially addressed in the new memorandum is the site distance component, basically looking from either West Boylston Street or Pierce Street to the new driveways. They've just provided a stopping site distance measurement, which is what it sounds like, the ability for drivers on the main street to stop and avoid collision with someone coming out of the site, which is obviously important. They meet that standard. In the peer review letter we prepared, we asked that they also look at intersection sight distance, which is when people are exiting the property, that they have clear lines of sight to the approaching traffic. I think that'll be okay in West Boylston Street. The Pierce Street side, under existing conditions, is a little challenging given the frontage of the site's pretty overgrown. So they may have to demonstrate what that sight line will be. And I'm assuming there would be some removal of existing brush, trees, and perhaps modifying the grade along the back driveway. So would need that documentation. I think it can be resolved. It just needs to be documented. As Maynard mentioned with the Mass DOT component, they will be looking at the frontage treatment. And I did see sidewalk is proposed along the frontage in West Boylston Street, as Wayne had mentioned, not in front of the donut shop. Likewise, I think they could explore what could be done within the state highway layout without impacting private property. But that'll definitely be discussed with Mass DOT. And this is one I expect Mass DOT will be asking about. They should document that they, I'm assuming, do not fall under MEPA jurisdiction, which typically is more of a regional impact review as opposed to a site plan level review. The project by itself might be slightly over certain thresholds, but when considering the former uses on the site, most of which are now inactive, the difference between the former condition and the proposed, I'd assume falls below that threshold, but that's something that they should document. So overall, I think they're heading in the right direction with the additional analysis that they provided. We just need a little bit further so we can be confident we have what we need in our end. Happy to go through more detail as needed, but otherwise I'll be here for questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Are there questions from board members on the presentation? Before we go to the applicant to sort of address some of the comments that were made. Nothing? Okay, if there's no questions from the board, then maybe we'll turn it over to the applicant. To make any responses to some or all of the comments that were made.
Mr. Chairman, let me know if you'd like.
Lisa McKinley Horn, Associate Transportation Engineer. Thank you for your comments. And yes, thank you for noting that we sent. Wayne, can you hear and see everything okay?
Yes, Lisa, thank you. I stopped sharing. Everything's good on our end.
Okay, so the audio is coming out of my laptop. Are you all okay?
It's
Okay.
good on the online end. I don't know how it is in the audience.
Like, is that going to create a good record?
What was that?
Will that create a good record?
Yeah, it'll be recorded on Zoom and through here. So
Okay.
Okay, cool. So as Wayne and my name is Lisa McKinley Horn, Associate Transportation Engineer. As Patrick mentioned, we did submit a follow-up memo recently that really addresses the items that were highly discussed in December. So a quick recap of the main things that were discussed is really understanding what were the Saturday traffic counts and how about the site generated trips on a Saturday, because we analyzed typically on the weekday AM and PM. We took a look more about the crash data at other areas that we did not include in the original analysis. We did take a look at the site distance analysis, as Patrick mentioned, but not the intersection site distance, and then just a conclusion and mitigations towards the end. So at first, this is two different figures. On the left-hand side, this is just the AM and PM for the weekday traffic. And then, as mentioned, we did the traffic counts back in 2024 on a Tuesday, April 9th. We recently just also did a Saturday midday. So that was just during like 11 to 1 p.m. And that was done January 11th of this year. And as you can tell, when we're looking at the traffic counts at the signalized intersection just south of the proposed development at West Boylston Street and Woodland Street, the Saturday count is about 1526 vehicles per hour, but the weekday PM peak hour, it's about 1935, which is indicating during the weekday, it is operating the worst. So it's an additional traffic of 409 trips at this intersection here. Another item that was discussed, okay, how much trips will this site be generating on a Saturday? So we also took a look at the Saturday midday peak hours. The first row is looking at the residential, and then there's different brackets or nomenclature for AM, PM, and Saturday. So if you look at the residential on a PM peak hour, which is the worst, it's generating about 41 trips. That's the total trips. And then on a Saturday, it's about 33 trips. Then when we're looking at the retail portion, it's about the same. It is the same for weekday PM and Saturday midday. So the weekday PM, it generates the most trips plus 8 trips. So we took a look at the traffic counts, really understanding how is it operating on a Saturday? How many trips is it going to be generating on a Saturday? And weekday PM is the worst case, like the conservative approach, similarly what Patrick mentioned, but this is just showing you visually. So we also took a look, more details of the crash data. What you see here, we did take it from Mass DOT Crash Portal for the last 6 years. So if we're looking at Pearson Woodland, unsignalized intersection, there was, as Patrick mentioned, one crash is too many, of course. We don't want to hurt anybody, and this project is not deteriorating more traffic, more crashes. But one thing that has been happening is that at Pearson Woodland, there was one fatal crash. There was a crash that was non-fatal, single vehicle crash at Worcester and Woodland Street, also unsignalized intersection. It was a property damage only crash as well, and it was a single vehicle crash. So we look at 2 different unsignalized intersections, really understanding the crashes that has occurred in this area. And then we also took a look along Worcester Street because there was a lot of concerns. What's happening along Worcester? Our site driveway is along Pierce Street, not directly abutting Worcester Street, but we definitely heard the concern as that there could be some concerns along Worcester Street. So there were 7 reported crashes. There were 5 non-fatal injuries and 2 property damage only. 4 of the crashes, they were collisions with other motor vehicles. 2 of them were one with a tree, one with an embankment. There was one crash that occurred during dark lighted conditions. And when we're looking at the driver's contributing circumstances, it ranged from no improper driving to failing to yield a right of way.
So where was the location? This particular crash.
For the
Pierce and
wait, say that again.
you mentioned these crashes, right? The last slide.
Yeah.
Worcester and Pierce.
Yes.
Where was the location?
It's along where the green boxes and these red dots where it's located.
Is it the Pierce coming down on the Worcester Street?
There is one that occurred at the intersection that was geocoded per DOT. There was one that was located right here, this little dot here. But then there were some along the curve, along the roadway itself. So we also took a look at the site distance analysis along the 2 site driveways along West Boylston Street and one along the Pierce Street. And when looking at West Boylston Street for the posted speed limit, which is about 35, and then the 85th percentile along 40 miles per hour, they all met the stopping site distance. And similarly with Pierce Street. So what Patrick mentioned is that we have not done the intersection site distance, which is something that we will follow up with. So in conclusion, when looking at the turning movement counts at the signalized intersection at West Boylston Street and Woodland Street, it does reveal that the weekday PM peak hour, it experienced the highest traffic as well. It generates the most amount of trips, really saying that when we're looking at the worst case approach or scenario, weekday PM peak hour is the hour that we should be analyzing. And as Patrick mentioned, is that if the weekday PM peak hour is operating okay, that means Saturday will also be okay, especially when looking at the traffic volumes and site generated trips. And then lastly, for the conclusions and mitigations, is that the first two bullet points that was included in the traffic impact and analysis, but just really making sure that all of the signs are compliant with the MUTCD, and then making sure that the residential buildings that they have information about transit. And then of course we talked about the sidewalk facilities that's going to be installed along West Boylston Street. But two additional ones is just more about there are bus stops right by West Boylston Street, north of Woodland Street. So coordinating with WRTA to either relocate the bus stops or add by the proposed development, because you still have to walk down south to actually get to the existing bus stop, but just really coordinating with them and seeing if it's open to possibilities. And then along Pierce Street near the site driveway, really making sure that there's signage of intersection warning signs so people know that, hey, there's a driveway here. And that concludes the presentation.
You talked about peak hours. What hours are those? What hours do you use it for peak hours?
So for the weekday, for AM and PM, for AM, we studied between 7 to 9. And then the PM is 4 to 6. Saturday, 11 to 1 PM. So that's a typical time that we conducted the counts, but the actual peak hour of this intersection, particularly at West Boylston Street and Woodland Street, and the AM, it occurred between 7:30 to 8:30. So that was the worst when looking at that range. And then same thing with the PM, it was occurring between 4:15 to 5:15. And then on a Saturday, it was between 11:30 to 12:30. So that was the peak hour. That was the worst.
And you did this study in April?
We did the counts back on a Tuesday when school was in session in April, and then our Saturday was done in January.
Okay. Did you take into consideration the summer? Because the summer hours, it's a lot different. There's a lot more traffic. People are out doing errands and stuff like that. I mean, I know I was a stickler at the last meeting, but, living here and have to go out to these, and no offense to Mr. Bronco, but I might not have condolences. To a day is kind of a mystery, especially if the light at CVS, that's what dictates how to get in and out of that parking lot. You have people coming from Worcester, they have to stop there. Now people have to go around them because the traffic going out is stalled because the light is red or the traffic is backed up. So that's why I was concerned when you said, Monday through Friday, and, you talk about peak hours, living in this town and knowing what it's like on Saturdays and Sundays, I just didn't understand why, you just look at the weekdays, when the weekend is just as important. A lot of people, like I said, a lot of people are out shopping, are running errands and stuff. I mean, I understand the peak hours, you're looking at the traffic because people either going to work or coming home from work, but, looking at Saturdays and Sundays, especially now and during the summer, is really important. Like I said, no offense, Mr. Bronco, but getting out of your plaza, your parking lot areas can be tricky.
Right, well, though it's not related to this hearing, we're working on an application to redevelop that property on that side too, which should significantly improve things. And we had filed an application a few years back, Raj probably remembers, where we were going to relocate, and we didn't own the plaza at that point. Now we believe we'll be able to control 2 lots, keep the interior circulation
Okay.
off of West Boylston Street, but again, that's not relevant to this hearing.
Okay.
That's just, town business. And again, the Saturday counts were done in everything that was done on the update was in response to all the commentary we heard at the last hearing. We took that to heart, and we specifically addressed everything that we heard. So we did that count in January because that, we hadn't heard it before that. And, owning property in a business and having worked at it, I understand your comment. And one thing I've noticed, with that Dunkin' business is on Saturday, the counts tell you what it is, but it seems busier because it's busier on the non-peak hours than it is during the week because people aren't at work or at school. So say at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's more traffic than there is 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, but it's not a peak issue.
The reason I was asking about Saturdays and Sundays, because there are times that the drive-through is out on West Boylston Street, and that's a dangerous factor.
That's typically because we have staff that doesn't.
But I mean, it's not anybody. That's why I'm concerned about the weekends, because that's when it usually happens, or in the mornings, sometimes when people are going to work and stuff. I've seen the traffic almost onto West Boylston Street. Okay, I'm done. Okay.
Other questions from the board?
Now, everything that we went through, we're gonna take one by one and discuss it.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So one thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm hoping that folks online can hear me. I don't know if I need to turn my microphone on. I'll put it on just to make sure. Sounds like we're not getting feedback, so.
That's better, Chris.
One thing I wanted, so obviously, we just heard from the town engineer on really sort of their overall review at this point, including traffic. We just heard some of the response of that review from the applicant as regards just strictly the traffic issues that were raised. It sounds like, obviously that there was an effort made between the first session and tonight to get some more traffic counts, for example, to look at a little bit more detail about the traffic situation on Saturday, for example, and also some more analysis was done there. It looks like so you just mentioned in your summary and in your slides that you're going to be reviewing and sort of providing some additional sort of intersection site distance information that I know that came up in the review that would be helpful for the board to have as well. So that's all great. So shifting gears a little bit from the traffic issues, where now we've heard a review and we've heard a rebuttal. Not that everything's done, but we've at least had one round there. But shifting gears to sort of some of the other issues, sort of the more general sort of engineering type of issues, and the stormwater issues, some of the stormwater comments that have come up as well. So for that, I wonder if it makes sense to give the applicant a little bit more time to sort of review those and provide comments or rebuttals to maybe plan for that for a next hearing, our next session. Does that make sense, or what do you think is appropriate there?
Mr. Chair, I'm Patrick Healy. I'm a civil engineer with Thompson Liston Associates. We did the site planning and stormwater calculations. So I heard Mr. Amico's comments. We've read through their comments. I think many of these can be answered in writing. We can refer them to different documents to look at. We can provide some supplemental information with regard to the truck turning and so forth. We are planning to do additional soil testing. This was a preliminary plan. We did sufficient testing to prove that the systems were feasible. It's not at the design or construction level. We realize that. We do have some additional work to do to get to that point.
So that goes to the test pit issue that was
Some of the
mentioned?
test pits is related to stormwater, the type of overflows that are proposed for the stormwater systems and so forth. We realize there's some more details to work out.
Yeah, sure,
We're
of course.
At this point that the project's feasible.
Yeah.
The soil conditions, the stormwater is all feasible for the particular site.
Yeah.
If you need more information, we're happy to provide more information for VHB to complete their review. As I said, we do have more. Some boring information, geotechnical information that would be helpful, to add to this analysis. And as I said, many of these, I think, are simple responses, maybe an additional detail or dimension here or there to clarify things. I don't see anything that's a showstopper, if you will.
Okay, so yes, so that's helpful. I think that sounds reasonable to me. Maybe it's a good a moment to maybe bring up the question that David asked earlier about the letter that was sent to us from DCR. Do you have any comments on that? Do you want to address that at all at this time?
Sure. We did identify the DCR permitting in our initial application
Yes.
as one of the
Yes.
that we have to pursue after receiving local approval.
Yep.
We received the letter from DCR. We have not yet met with DCR to
Yep.
review the project, but we know we do have to do that. We're in an area of jurisdiction because we're in the secondary protection zone,
Mhm.
which is between 200 and 400 feet of a tributary. And we're also in a medium yield aquifer. So we know that the site's jurisdictional.
Yeah.
We have incorporated measures in this site plan design and stormwater system that we've used elsewhere successfully in the watershed.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be a big surprise about how we're managing stormwater or, so forth.
Yeah, so it sounded, just reading the letter, it sounded like to me that was, you've considered that all along sort of part of the process that you're working through, that wasn't necessarily a surprise. It was something that you were anticipating, as you said, in your original documents to the board, and that now we're just, beginning to go through that process. And I mean, not that process is necessarily strictly related to this hearing here, but obviously for your sake, in order to actually, get to finalize and build the project, that would be a further step that would be needed to be completed. Is that fair?
Yes. And I'm going to suggest a lot of the technical things that our engineer talked to your engineers about. I think we'll probably eliminate a lot of those for
Yep.
the board because, again, it's engineering.
Yeah.
Highly technical stuff, so that if we can satisfy your experts, we can address that most of it outside the hearing, and then they can just describe how they were satisfied.
Okay,
For
Okay.
the town.
excellent,
The
excellent.
one question Mr. Amico brought up was whether you have received any comments from the fire chief. So I haven't seen any comments at this point. I'm certainly willing to make contact with him to see if he has comments.
Yes, so I know that the application, as it was submitted to us, was provided to,
All the time.
numerous town boards, the fire department, police, and everyone. To date, I think we actually did receive comments from the water district, I
We
believe
did
it
get
was.
water detail comments from.
But to my knowledge, we haven't received anything from the fire department. One thing I could do is, based upon some of the comments that came up in VHB's review, is, I'd be happy to reach out to the fire chief and just ask him directly if he or someone at the department has any comments or concerns specifically around, fire truck access, and moving the fire trucks around the proposed site. I'd certainly be happy to reach out to him. I obviously can't make any promises as to what that response may or may not look like, but I'm happy to at least, reach out if there are any concerns. I think everybody would be better off if we know those sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm
Excellent.
also concerned because we haven't heard anything from the sewer commissioners about the sewer capacity, if it's gonna be able to handle it or not.
Yeah, I know that was one of the issues that I know came up in the review, was that was still sort of undetermined how that might work out. I don't know if there are comments. Maybe Rain, could you comment on that a little bit about sort of how your review letter talked about, not necessarily that there is a problem with sewer connection, but what some of the unknowns currently are that sort of relate to that?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Let me just,
No, we can't.
can you hear me or you cannot?
No, we can't hear you right now. Sorry. Just give us a moment. All right, can we try again, Wayne?
Sure. How about this, Mr. Chairman? Can you hear me now?
It's perfect. Thank you.
Sure. So let me just read you the comment here because it is kind of, my engineer was scratching his head a little bit about the sewer connections. It's currently undetermined whether sewer services are feasible to any of the proposed buildings, specifically buildings A and B. No existing sewer information is provided on the plans, and there is a note stating contractor shall uncover existing sewer service and report location and invert to the engineer to determine whether or not the existing service can be reused. This raises a concern regarding a contingency plan if the existing service cannot be used. Will a pump station be needed if gravity flow cannot be achieved? This would be a significant change during construction if this is required. Similarly, for building 1, there is no existing sewer information provided on the plan, nor is there any proposed invert information available to determine the feasibility of the sewer layout. In essence, we're questioning the feasibility of buildings A and B. The engineer may have a very reasonable explanation for that, but it's not clear in the plans that were provided.
Yeah, and so thank you for that. And it sounds like, I know we're getting the feedback again, apologies. It sounds like that may be something that the applicant will address in the future. So we'll certainly do an opportunity to do that.
Yes, we will.
Excellent.
One of the comments that was made on VHB was, I don't know if you know this, as Department of Public Works reviewed the current plans and then talking about a manhole and location of where the service connections tie into the main. Do we know if it's number 17?
Yeah.
On page 8. Do we know if DPW has reviewed this or not?
So again, that to me, that's a board that not a board, a town body that I'm pretty sure we sent them the application. We haven't heard anything back.
Do we need to follow up on that, the zoning board, or what? How that? Normally we get the. Yeah, we get all this information. I mean, how are we supposed to, determine on whether to approve or not if we don't have all the information?
Right. So that's
like he was talking about the sewer. Okay, well, the sewer on West Boylston Street might be right, but I don't know what's the situation on Pierce Street.
Yeah.
Are there sewer connections there?
Yeah.
And where are they located? Something I know that on our last 40B project, the applicant had to go before the sewer commissioners, and they had the whole thing. Wesson and Sampson provided a whole bunch of information.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not seeing any of that, and I
Yeah.
brought this up at the last meeting, and I just want to know why we're not seeing all of this. I mean, we send it out to the boards like the fire chief, the police chief. All
Yeah.
these people should be reporting back to us
Yeah.
and let us know. Because how are we supposed to make a decision if we don't have all the information?
How about the Concom? Is there did we get anything from Concom? Toby, any Concom?
Anything from
I don't
Concom?
believe that we did.
Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, right behind the Pierce Street is Gate Brooks.
Yeah.
Is that body of water? Am I right? Okay.
So
That's why we named the project. It's
No. I understand that, but after what Mr. Healy said about the letter from DCR, I'm looking at their map back here, and they're saying that that any proposed activities or alterations on the above referenced properties requires the filing of an application with the division, which I know that you're eventually going to, and it's because of Gate Books. That's right behind it, this property. So they want to make sure that nothing's going to run into the, into the brook itself. So I'm sure you guys get that under control, but make sure you let us know.
Mr. Chair, if I could respond to that.
Go ahead.
We're not aware of any jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission where all the work that's proposed is more than 200 feet from.
All I want is yes or no from the Concom.
I see.
All I want is yes or no. They normally say in a one line.
I see.
Bill Chase will send you a one line email. So there is, Concom is not.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point.
Yeah.
Because in other applications, other requests that we've received, we always share the information.
Maybe we could ask Toby to contact the different boards and
Toby or I, one of us, we can certainly reach out to the Concom, and even if they want to just acknowledge that, look, this isn't within their jurisdiction, that would be great for this board to know. So that's fine. I think to your broader point, so I hear everything you said. I agree in principle. I think with everything that you said about sort of having feedback from all these other town boards would really be helpful. So I agree with you entirely there. And so that's why certainly I'm in favor of, as we've just been talking about, reaching out to these, to the fire department, the Conservation Commission, DPW again, and ask them for this information. Now, granted, that they should already have the applications. And I would also say that I think we're closer to the beginning of this process than we are to the end. So I think there's still time there. Nonetheless, I wouldn't, I still think that it's appropriate that we go ahead and sort of reach out to at least these particular three, since they seem to be sort of most closely related to some of the engineering issues that have been raised tonight. Sewer commissioners, yeah. So that's select board, I believe.
Because I want to make sure, I'm sure that West Boylston is all set, but I want to know what's happening on Pierce Street. Is there a sewer connection there? How far is it away? How much are they going to have to go to get the sewers hooked up to that? Or is there any sewage connections on Pierce Street?
Okay.
You know, where this project is going to go.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, go ahead.
And also, it seems like, VHP report was sent on January 27th.
Yeah.
So normally, we see that VHP comments followed by the applicant's comments will be there.
Yeah.
So my understanding is, you may not have enough time to review all of those for the public, So we did hear the comments from the VHP. The applicant comments was not heard for all of them. There are about 10 pages of the comments were here. So hopefully, they will send us the comments also in written comments.
Yes, through the chair, we will be submitting written responses to all of those comments.
That's great. That's great. And as I said, I will reach out to these various boards that were just mentioned because they do seem particularly relevant to the technical and engineering review that we're talking about here. Judy, is there anything else that sort of comes to mind at this point to sort of make sure that
One more
that
thing,
we're
do we get
addressing?
comments from the Board of Health?
From who?
Board of Health?
Board of Health.
No, only if the only. Yeah,
No,
but the only time the Board of Health will get involved is if there's not
If it's
sewer,
septic.
right? If it's septic system.
It's on septic, but it's on sewer, right?
Yeah, so and they've requested that, so that's why.
Okay.
And maybe they haven't.
since you are here,
My big concern is Pierce Street. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's sewer,
Yeah.
where the sewer connections are. I don't know how far they're gonna have to go. If it's gonna be right on top of their property, that's fine and dandy.
Yeah.
But like I said, we haven't heard anything from the sewer commissioners, and usually that's
Yeah.
something that Weston and Sampson goes through and says, yeah, we have enough sewer, we have enough to go through with the sewer there.
Yeah.
But, so I think that,
I don't think
I
so.
understand what you're saying, this is at the beginning,
Yeah.
but it's always nice to have the information as we're
Agreed.
going along, so that we
Agreed.
can, if we have any questions in between that, not wait till almost the end.
Yeah.
And then if you have questions, then we put them behind, we put us behind, then we have to ask for an extension. I want to try to keep it running smooth.
Yeah, I entirely agree
So-
with that.
to add on to Dave's, as far as I know, it was not brought before the sewer commissioners.
Okay.
So it's good idea. I don't know who will brought it up.
Yeah.
Before the sewer
Yeah,
commissioners.
so like I said, I'm happy to follow up with each of those, boards and bodies, specifically for those four that were mentioned. And then I would also say as well, I'm happy to actually, effectively send out emails to those folks. But then also, depending upon their feedback, it may make sense for the applicant as well to sort of interact with those bodies, depending upon the feedback that we receive. Because I think what I'm agreeing with everything that I'm hearing here. I think really what I want to drive at is to the extent there are sort of major, potential problems here from an engineering perspective, from a traffic perspective, all of those things. I want to try and uncover those as quickly as we can, such that they can be addressed sort of, one way or the other. I think everybody likely agrees with that. And so to me, I think the best way to do that is, again, all these boards should already have this information. Nonetheless, I think it's prudent for us to sort of proactively reach out to them now and ask them if they could provide us feedback on any concerns or, the results of any review that they may have already undertaken or that they could do hopefully in the short term and provide us with any feedback or concerns that they may have on these issues. So I'm happy to take that upon myself and just sort of reach out to be the fire chief, DPW specifically, I think, as it relates to sewer connection issues and the sewer commission there, and also Concom. And so it looks like that maybe Board of Health is probably less relevant if the goal here is to tie into sewer.
If there is no sewer, then Board of Health involved.
Yeah. We'll cross that bridge if we get to it. Judy, go ahead.
So it's my understanding that it's not jurisdictional from the Conservation Commission's point of view. So they may not have looked at this beyond just saying,
Exactly.
jurisdiction.
Normally we just get a
there's
one sentence
one-line
email
Yeah, we
saying
do get that.
this is not within our jurisdiction,
Okay.
and then we know.
yeah, I think you should do that. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to think of the order of urgency here. So.
In all other issues, we do get conservation comment, the conservation committee comments.
Okay, so that's helpful. If there aren't any other questions from board members on sort of these engineering issues.
Did you
Yes.
ask Mr. Ursiani or Mr. Benson? I don't know if they have anything.
Yes, Mr. Orsiani, Mr. Benson, do you have any questions that are related to engineering review issues?
Not at the time.
Doesn't sound like it. Okay,
Try to talk.
I think he just said no.
No.
All right, so I think we're good there. So then, well, I mean, I'm not looking to wrap things up or anything, but I want to at least temporarily sort of address a couple of other issues too, maybe, and then from there we can figure out where are we going from here and how best to get there. But one thing that I want to mention is I know in the application that was requested as per the board regulations. There was a fee waiver that was requested that we mentioned during the last session. And so I know that still needs to be discussed and it needs to be determined. I'd rather make that decision. I'm not suggesting we need to make that again right now, that we need to make that decision, but I would like to make that decision sooner rather than later. So I don't want to wait, necessarily all that much longer to make that decision. So one thing that I would ask the board to give some consideration to between now and the next time we meet is to think a little bit about that. And so just to provide a little bit of color to that issue, per the board's regulations for comprehensive permit applications, there are fees that this board requires, and they fall into two different buckets, okay? So the first bucket is the one where the applicant is requesting a fee waiver. And according to our regs, it's called the general admission and process fee, okay? And so it's based on sort of an equation, but one of the big inputs to that equation is the total number of units or residences, or residential units that are being requested. So that total fee without any reduction or without any waiver, by my calculation, is something on the order of about $17,000, okay? Now, and we talked about this at the last session, we are certainly cognizant of the fact that this is a LIP or a local initiative petition or program. I forget what the P stands for, but this is a local initiative, and this is something that the select board not that long ago took up and decided to generally, at least conceptually, show some kind of support for this application. So that's something I think the board should take into consideration. Now that fee, the money for that fee essentially stays with the ZBA's account, okay? And so, for example, that fee would generally be earmarked to pay for things like when we had to put out a public notice for this meeting. So we had to pay, a small amount of money to put a little ad in the Telegram and Gazette, for example, to open up this public hearing. That costs a little bit of money. Also, it costs maybe a little bit more money for our very helpful services from Toby.
iPay.
Yeah, exactly. For the minutes and for keeping track of all of these discussions here. That's obviously a critically
keeping us in
important
line.
part, and keeping us in line, all of that. So I want to make sure that doesn't get lost, because those are costs that, in my view, we definitely need to consider and to make sure that we're able to cover those costs. Now, that said, so I don't know necessarily that we could bring that all the way down to zero. But I don't know necessarily that we need to maintain sort of the full fee of $17,000 either. So one thing I want the board to consider is, what seems like, if any, what seems like sort of a reasonable halfway point there.
So you're talking about this year,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah, the rules and regs for the board for
So,
comprehensive permits.
If we go directly by this, it's gonna be a high number, and we can determine whether we wanna cut that number. So if it's like $25,000, we can cut it down to 15 or 20.
It's at the discretion of this board.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
exactly. Now, so that's one bucket of money that is involved here, and we can address that. Do you have a comment, Raj?
Again, even if it is for the board, even if it is a lift project, the select board or the town is interested in the project, but not reducing the fee,
Yeah,
right? We do need the project.
that's possible. Yeah,
That's what
that's certainly possible. Absolutely. I think that's fair. So again, I just want to be clear. So that's sort of one bucket. Then there's a second independent sort of, I'll call it a second bucket of money that is involved here, that is really sort of earmarked not towards TNG, not towards, minutes for the meetings, but is earmarked towards technical review. So it's earmarked towards money for the town engineer, for example. It's also potentially earmarked towards the town legal fees that are related to sort of the drafting and completion of an ultimate comprehensive permit, for example, should the board ultimately decide to approve this project. That money was provided to the board with the application. We're holding that money in a town account currently. So we have a certain amount of money for that. And that account is separate from the first one that I was talking about. But as to that second bucket of money that's really earmarked for technical review, legal review, those kinds of things, there's a bolus of money that's there. And one thing that I want to make sure of is that as we go through this, we're obviously incurring fees from the engineering firm. I want to make sure that we're staying on top of that money to make sure that there's always more than enough money there to cover those services. And so on a sort of ad hoc as needed basis, we'll be addressing that with the applicant just to make sure that stays in a good place. The reason why I'm bringing this up, there's a number of reasons why I'm bringing this up. But one of the primary ones is obviously now, since we've just received the first round of review from the town engineer, we also just recently received the first invoice. So obviously we need to cover that invoice. We have right now certainly more than enough money that's already been provided by the applicant to cover this first invoice. So if the board is comfortable, what I would be willing to do is to reach out to the town accountant and prepare them to pay that first invoice out of that first bolus of money that has already been provided for that purpose.
Yeah.
Does that sound reasonable, Judy? Okay,
Sounds good to me.
great.
There should be an invoice. Normally we sign that thing.
Yep. So what I'll do then, I'll follow up with the town. So because I believe that second bucket of money, for lack of a better term, I believe that second source of funds that actually we need to hold that in escrow for a specific account that is really earmarked just towards this project. as opposed to sort of a general town ZBA account. I want to make sure that that's done, and then that the money to pay for the town's engineering services comes out of the appropriate account for the just make sure everything is done in accordance with legal and proper accounting practices here, just to make everything is working the way that it should be. So just to make clear, I just wanted to bring that up for the record, make sure the board is comfortable with that. I'm not hearing or seeing any issues from the other two board members on paying those invoices. So that sounds reasonable to me. All right, so one other issue that I did want to mention, where is it? I have it on another page here. Yeah, that covers the invoice and the fee waiver. All right, so that covers both of those. Are there other comments or questions from board members at this time before we sort of consider how we might want to structure the next session?
Do we need to address this, or do we need to put it in the record?
I think we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Other questions about?
We, like you said, you know, we need to get our information from the other boards.
Yeah.
Hopefully, they're gonna have, by the next time we meet, hopefully, they'll have something from DCR that they'll send to us, you know, to cover the letter that they had, this letter. So, and hopefully by that time, Mr. Healy has been able to work with Mr. Amico and go through VHB's, you know, list here and work out all the details. So hopefully, I'm just wishing, you know, hoping that by the time we meet the next time, you guys have gone through all of this and have come to an agreement on hopefully most of it, if not all of it. I don't know if that's possible, but I know the two of you work well together. I know you've done jobs together before, so I'm sure that it will be quick and painless.
Okay, thank you for that.
Through the chair, I hope that will be the case. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you going to open it up to the public?
No,
for
one
any
of the
comment?
How much time it may take for this year? Anything? You may have to submit an application from the time of application to for a determination. In your experience,
Well, the DCR has strict regulations that govern the time period between applications and permitting. So what we normally do is go through local permitting first before filing with DCR.
Oh.
So, for example, I have a project in Princeton I'm working on. Yeah, we've been through planning board, conservation. That one actually had to go to MIPA. We had our DCR hearing today. Hearing was closed. They have 30 days to issue, but it's taken 6 months all told. So this project, I don't expect will take 6 months because it doesn't appear to us currently that it's subject to MIPA.
So let me ask you a question on it. And again, this is just, I want to make sure I understand the process. So is it your understanding as somebody who's been through sort of the process at DCR, I think that largely the process that we're going through here for purposes of the comprehensive permit, the review that we're doing, technical review, stormwater, all of that is sort of, in a sense, independent of the DCR process?
Legally, it is. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
it is.
okay, that's my understanding.
I mean, typically, a DCR process would follow the comprehensive permit, and it would be a condition of the permit
Okay,
that they don't get a building permit until they satisfy these other state requirements.
not only that, DCR in our town is very strong.
Mhm.
In other projects, even the local boards approved it.
Yeah.
But DCR said, no, you have to take it down.
Yeah.
They are taking it down. They are removing whatever they did.
Yeah.
Without naming the project.
okay.
So DCR is much more powerful.
Yeah. And so again, just to further edify myself here, if I can, so we don't necessarily need something from DCR in order to decide one way or another in this instance. Is that fair?
You would make that a condition of the permit if you decided to approve the comprehensive permit. It would be a condition.
We just couldn't build it without DCR.
Right. So
They cannot.
it's really something you don't deal with because it's beyond your jurisdiction, but it certainly is in the town's interest to make sure they get that before
Right.
they get a building permit.
Right.
But they're gonna
And
have to anyway.
It's called out specifically in our application. We're,
Yeah.
we're aware
Yeah.
that we need to.
Exactly. Yep. So to me, it sounds like you were aware of this, obviously, from the get-go. Questions come up. We received a letter from DCR, so it sounds like the process is moving. It's doing what it's supposed to do. We're just sort of in the middle of this, so it's a little bit of kind of a, sausage making process. It may not be pretty, but it's all happening.
Right, and again, with DCR, and again, through the chair, through your consultant, I think probably the way to do this would be to just agree that it's a condition and then leave it. Because we have to do it, and we'll have to report back to you if and when we get it, and we're not gonna get a building permit until we do.
Yeah.
So it's not really necessary to these
Right.
hearings.
And so
Right.
to your point,
agree.
to just put a blunt point on it, even if this board were to approve this project, if you don't get approval from DCR independently, you can't build.
It's dead.
Okay.
Right.
Fair enough.
That being said, Mr. Chair, we do plan to approach DCR soon to have
Yeah.
an initial conversation to get any feedback they might have on the
Okay.
design before we go and make renovations
And-
or
and-
revisions to the plan that they might object to. We want to try to incorporate,
Yep.
everyone's opinion and input into the plan.
Right,
Okay.
Again, that's gonna also go to site drainage, right, which with
Yeah.
peer review,
Yeah.
with your engineer, we're gonna
Yeah.
have to design with both parties in mind.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. Any other questions from board members? Okay. So I am happy to open it up for public comment. We're doing okay on time here. So what I would ask is that if there's no other comments either from the applicant or the board, then we can do that. I would like to sort of try and keep it to new subject matter that wasn't raised, say, at our previous session. I'll try and be a little gentle there. But if we can do that, that would be wonderful. So let me start with members of the public who are here at Town Hall. And then I promise I will get to any members of the public that are attending virtually as well. So with that, if there are any members of the public who are here at Town Hall and wish to make a comment, I would ask that you can stand up, please state your name and your address, and then you can proceed with your comments. So with that, are there any members of the public who would like to say something? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Dave Toppin. I live at 160 West Boylston Street.
Yes.
And I'd like to just say that I am in favor of commercial development on Route 12, but I think putting 80 units in is too much of a tax on the systems that we have in place. The traffic, whatever studies they may do, I live there. I'm probably the only one here that lives on Route 12, but I live there. And the traffic is just ridiculous a lot of times already. And you want to put 80 more units in, and God knows how many more cars. And then you're telling us you're gonna redo the Dunkin' Donuts Plaza, which I'm thinking that it's probably gonna be more traffic from that if you're gonna make it better or bigger. And you don't even know what kind of retail assumptions, retail businesses, you're making assumptions about what kind of businesses are. You don't know how many cars are gonna be in and out. The businesses aren't there and they haven't been approved. I'm probably speaking against my own interests because more traffic would make property on Route 12 more valuable in a commercial sense. But I think it's a horrible thing for the town. I don't see any traffic studies on Franklin Street and how it would affect one of the most dangerous intersections in the state from what the DOT tells us. We had a meeting on that maybe 6 or 8 months ago. There will be more crashes, more people will be injured, more traffic. There will be more mad drivers because there's more traffic, and there will be more accidents because of that. And that's about all I have to say. I think this is a very bad thing for the town. I think we should fight every 40B that comes through here with everything we can, because it's destroying the character of our town. Trying to turn us into a little city.
Thank you. Any other comments from folks here at Town Hall? Yes, please state.
Chris Morgan, 340 Goodale Street.
we limiting the comments to the material that was presented tonight, or just our overall reactions to the applications thus far?
Whatever you want.
Anything you want to. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know this project was endorsed by the select board, by the Affordable Housing Trust. It's a great project. I guess one of the questions I might ask is there any room in the pro forma for consideration of accommodating lower income, a couple of units for lower income household? One of the things in our goals in town are to try to create an easy segue for seniors, veterans, disabled, to transition out of existing households into a better existence in their later years. When I was going through the pro forma, I did notice, which was excellent, that your revenue forecasts don't include any revenue from the commercial space. And I'm wondering if that might be something that could possibly, if the inclusion of that revenue might be something that might help offset maybe looking at some lower opportunities for lower income units. Thanks.
Sure. Through the chair, yes. So 20 of the units, which is 25% of the project, are going to be affordable under the HUD guidelines. And those rents obviously are already going to be included. Our business model and other residential projects we've done, and I'll use the one in Worcester at 100 Wall Street, the old El Morocco site, because we did get HUD approval for that. That was an HDIP program. So our business model there was to set our market rate rents about 15 to 20% lower than probably what the market would bear. That's our business model. Keeps the units full, it keeps them from turning over, keeps problem tenants out, people want to stay. And that's been a workable model for us. It generally translated into workforce housing. And we expect, unless economics change radically, that we would apply the same business model to this project. Because again, you've seen the projects we compete with that were built after our El Morocco project, the rents are $1,000 more a month than ours are. And they have vacancies and we don't, and we have waiting lists. So we plan to, we expect it would work here. And we plan to do that. Again, we already own property and do a lot of business in West Boylston. So we understand the community. And we have been working with the previous town administrator. I know you're in a transition now. And part of when we were asked to do a friendly 40B, the LIP process, part of that was to include a local preference when we did, you have to do a lottery. The state has a variety of rules and regulations we need to follow. And your consultant knows this much better than I do. So we plan to do that, and they asked for a local preference. One of the specific things was exactly what you mentioned. Seniors wanting to downsize out of their homes. Maybe they have a low interest mortgage. Maybe they have no mortgage. The kids are out of the house, but they want to stay in the community. And that's something they asked us. So we'd be working with the Affordable Housing Trust, the Senior Center. Like there are a variety of things we will do when we get there, but yeah, that is clearly top of mind for that process.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Chris, what do you mean by low rate or whatever that?
Low income?
Low income.
So right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably know the metrics better than I do. But right now, you're going at 80% of 80% of AMI is what's required. Yeah. Median income. So 25 of the units or a quarter of the units. 25%. 25% have to meet that number, which right now, as I recall from the pro forma, is still pretty steep. I mean, it's, for one bedroom, I don't have the number in my hand, but it's,
So that's exactly I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
In another project, we have the other project.
Right.
So even person who works and who makes money in the town, they cannot afford to live because the rents are sky high. because of the rents are fixed by the, based on, yeah, but based on the medium income. The Spoils and medium income is high compared to other places, even though I think Worcester too, right? So,
Right.
you know, I know someone in town, you know, they wanted to go to the other place. No, it was so high.
Well, it's very difficult. You know,
That's why I was asking, you know, low income.
I mean, I sit on the housing authority as well, and I know there's a waiting list, thousands deep on that one, which is good, but that's subsidized. I'm just saying if there's a way to, you know, get a couple of units or a few units in there so that we can, you know, really show that we're trying to accommodate. You know,
Right,
and I
so-
don't know what the-
So I've got just general market commentary, right? Based on our experience, to go 60 or even down to 30%, but even 60 typically involves subsidized projects. This isn't subsidized. We're paying 100% out of our own pocket for this. The town doesn't have money to give us. The Worcester projects I'm familiar with or have been involved with, generally they got state tax credits, federal tax credits, affordable housing trust fund money, that allowed them to do it. Given the, you know, the increased construction costs that are mounting every year. And one of the things we're preparing for, we're forecasting is a further increase, let alone the federal government tariffs that are being bandied about now. A lot of our building materials come from overseas. Reconstructing Southern California, that's a city the size of Metro Washington, D.C. that was destroyed. Not just houses, everything. Doctors' offices, schools, parks, playgrounds, shopping centers, places of employment, everything. And you can't say, I'm going to build houses now without building all of that. That's going to be an enormous draw of labor and materials. So we are anticipating our construction costs are probably going to spike. So I can't make any promises to go below 80 AMI on those projects. I just don't know what is going to happen to the economy in probably 12 months when we're in the middle of constructing this.
So thank you for that. Just, and also one comment I did want to make, between the last meeting or the last session, I should say, and this one, we did also, actually, I think it was earlier today, where we received a letter that addressed one of the issues that we talked about at the first session, which was the exemption for any additional 40B type of projects based on the 1.5% land area standard. And I think as folks will remember, when we talked about that at the last session, it seemed, I think the record showed that there was a time a number of years ago, about 10 or 12 years ago, I think, where the town had done that calculation, and the town was of the opinion that we actually met that standard. But then subsequently, over the last, I don't know, 6 or 7, maybe 8 years, whatever it is, since that time, it seems like that at least the regulations around that, the part of that test, have changed, and that and that also then resulted in, I think it was, I don't know if it was the Affordable Housing Trust who was in charge of that, and we took a particularly close look at that. But I think their position subsequently also changed in that they were no longer confident that the town met that standard. So I just wanted to refresh everybody's memory that we talked about that at the last meeting. And further, we also talked about the fact that there is a state a state mandated deadline by which the ZBA has to, if it's going to reject on that basis, it has to reject by a certain deadline, and that deadline has now passed. So if this board were so inclined, we wouldn't be able to deny the application on that basis anyway. So I just want to mention that, just to make that clear. Again, we talked about this at the last meeting, but I just wanted to make sure that was made clear. Now, let me see if there are comments online from folks, from members of the public who would like to speak. We may need help from our IT guru to to make this happen. If you could make it possible that we could, yeah, that's wonderful. So if there are comments from members of the public, feel free to unmute yourself, state your name and your address, and then you can go ahead with your question. Okay, hearing none. So with that, then, why don't we think about how do we want to structure the next session of the hearing? Because it's certainly sounding like, given the non-traffic issues that were raised by the engineer, and we talked about the applicant is going to prepare sort of rebuttal in writing to a number of those things. I imagine that that's probably a good place for us to start thinking about how we might want to plan what happens during the next meeting. I don't know, Judy, do you have a sense of, or I could ask the applicant, do you have a sense of how much time you might like to sort of go through that review and maybe prepare something in writing that the board can take, and actually the town engineer can take a look at before we meet again? I'm wondering if a month is enough time, or if it's not enough time, or I'm just trying to get a sense of when we should continue this hearing to.
Mr. Chair, I think a month would allow enough time for us to submit a rebuttal and, and for VHB to
Okay.
take a look at it. What do you
Okay.
think, Wayne?
So March 4th.
No, let's check with Wayne. Wayne,
Yeah, I think we're going to need our IT help to turn up the
Can you
our
hear me?
work around here. Thank you so much, Wayne. Would a month be enough time for both for the initial rebuttal to your review, but then obviously depending upon when you get that rebuttal, to give you enough time to maybe take a look at it before we meet again?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I mean, it really depends on when Patrick submits a response with the follow-up material, right? If he gave it to us next week, that would be fine. If he gives it to us, a week before the hearing, that may not be enough time. We'll do our best to get things re-reviewed depending on when it's submitted, but we'd appreciate at least 2 or 3 weeks to try to get through that.
Okay.
Might I suggest a little longer than a month, say between March 15th and March 20th, something like that?
It's fine with me. Judy, do you have a sense of?
So to give Patrick enough time to respond in detail and in VHB to review his response.
Yeah, so around March 20th, 18th-ish, because you can only do Tuesdays. That's a good point.
There's just so many meetings right now. I really love just looking at this and I'm like.
Well, there's remote participation now too, correct?
I will be.
Oh, okay. Probably, and if not, it's all going to be mostly technical if Patrick can be here.
I mean, knowing Patrick and Mr. Amico, the way they work, I think that by the 17th, they can probably get
It probably won't need to be a lot of discussion. Yeah.
So that would mean that if you could get your initial review of the comments done, say, by about the end of February, that would give him at least 2.5 weeks. Yeah.
Patrick and
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to
reached out to the other boards, and they have sent input to us.
Yeah, exactly. And so on that point, I think, I don't see any reason why I couldn't make Monday, March 17th.
Yeah, that's fine.
Raj, could you make that day?
Monday.
So let me ask our two other remote board members if they can, at this point, likely make Monday, March 17th. Nate and John, could you just respond either verbally or visually and say whether Monday, March 17th looks open to you at this point in time?
Chris, can you hear us?
Yes.
You're, it's hard to hear you now, but you said Monday the 17th?
Yes, Monday the 17th. Hopefully that's a little bit better. Sorry, my mic was muted. Does it look like you might be available on Monday, March 17th?
Yes, it looks at this time.
Yeah, that's all we can ask. And how about you, John?
Same, excuse me, same.
Okay, great. So the it sounds like at least some of the applicants will be able to attend, so we'll take what we get, absolutely.
Well, like I said, hopefully they can get, two engineers to get
Exactly.
all those, and hopefully by that time, we'll have the input from the bills that we need to have input from.
Exactly, and I think these two gentlemen, both Patrick and Wayne, I think they've worked in similar situations with each other. So I know you guys can do a good job of coordinating these things among yourselves before sort of bringing this back.
Mr. Chair, if there's something I can do to help facilitate communication between now and the next hearing, either with town staff or the applicant, just let me know. I mean, I'm happy to do that. I'm just making that known to you.
Very helpful, thank you. All right, yes. So if there's nothing else, then I will entertain a motion to continue this hearing to March 17th, 2025
So
at
moved.
7 p.m.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. We're going, because it's a hybrid meeting, we're going to do a voice vote. So I will ask Dave first, your vote
Yes.
to continue?
Yes.
Yes. Raj, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, my vote is a yes. I will then ask John for your vote to continue to March 17th, 2025.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, John. And Nate, your vote to continue?
Yes.
Okay, it's 5-0. This hearing is continued to Monday, March 17th, 2025 at 7 p.m. I thank everyone for your attendance. Wonderful.
Also, we had Chris Mitchell. They were here.
Yes, and because I told them 8:30, I told them we might be a little late. So why don't we move on? Yes, we do. Toby, just so you're aware, I haven't had a chance to go through the minutes, so can we move that to the next?
Yeah.
Okay,
I haven't either.
all right, perfect. Thank you. All right,
This is a little body.
yeah, yeah,
But she does a great job.
absolutely.
Kind of glanced to it.
Absolutely. All right, so moving on then to our next agenda topic. And I note that we will be planning to adjourn the open session and to make a motion to move into executive session. So let me just read this executive session statement here into the record.
I'll see you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So pursuant, oh, you want to wait? Just one moment. We'll take a 1-minute recess here. All right, so we are still in open session. Now, let me just read this, this part of the agenda into the record, if I can.
Could we pause for 1 minute?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Toby.
This is all screwed up. I had to record the whole session before. because they weren't sure if this was gonna.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, I paused it, and now it's gone all the way back to the beginning. And I'm like, I think I'm just about, I'm losing it. All right, let me go to the next one.
Just bear with us for one more moment, please, online, if you can.
All right, I'm gonna record on this one. All right, that's how.
We're all set? Okay, great. So I'll read into the record pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, the board will discuss, deliberate, and advise counsel of action to be taken with respect to WB General 1 LLC versus Town of West Boylston Zoning Board of Appeals et al., 22 MISC 000210 DRR. As such, I move to enter into executive session under the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Part 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation in the matter of WB General 1 LLC versus Town of West Boylston Zoning Board of Appeals et al., 22 MISC 000210 DRR, as having this discussion in open session would have a detrimental effect on the town's litigating position. And now we'll take a roll call vote to decide whether to enter into executive session.
So you made the motion, I'm seconding the motion.
Thank you. So we have a motion. We have a second. Dave?
Yes.
Dave is yes vote. Raj?
Yes.
Yes. I'm yes as well. Nate, your vote for entering into executive session?
Yes.
Okay. And John, your vote for entering into executive session?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 5-0. We are entering into executive session. We have now
We will
entered,
not be entering into the open session.
and we will not reconvene an open session. The public is not to attend the executive session, and the motion to adjourn at the conclusion of the executive session, where a roll call vote will be taken to adjourn, which will happen in executive session, not in open session.
Nate and John, so everyone will be sent to a breakout room. So please wait for a few minutes.